Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome co-chair of the J Street PAC Board of Directors and vice chair of the J Street Board of Directors, Alexandra Stanton.
Good evening. I'm Alex Stanton, and as you just heard, I'm a member of J Street's board and co-chair of J Street's PAC. Tonight, we're going to hear a fascinating discussion on the impact and fallout of the 2016 election on the U.S.-Israel relationship. Israel, the ties between Israeli and American Jewish communities, the convergence of the Trump administration and the agenda of the Israeli right has dismayed and alarmed observers in both countries. Shared values and interests may be under threat, and old rules may well not apply any longer. In a rapidly changing new world, we need to make sense of what has happened, what it means, and what comes next. To do so, we've assembled a most impressive panel of veteran political and communal leaders and policy experts. I refer you to the conference program to review these speakers' extraordinarily long list of accomplishments, but for the sake of getting right to the heart of this fascinating conversation, I'd like to make very brief introductions of our distinguished panel. First, our moderator, Aluf Ben, is the editor-in-chief of Haaretz, a position he has held since 2011. A veteran writer and editor, he has covered peace, war, and politics, and has fought government secrecy and censorship for well over 30 years. Omer Bar-Lev, a member of Knesset from the Zionist Union, serves on the Committee of Foreign and Military Affairs. Welcome to your first J Street conference, MK Bar-Lev. From 2013 to 2015, Phil Gordon was Special Assistant to the President and White House Coordinator for the Middle East, North Africa, and the Gulf region. Akram Hassan is a member of the Knesset for the Kulanu Party and a member of the Druze Israeli community. Welcome to your first J Street conference, MK Hassan. Not done. Welcome back to her second J Street conference, Tamar Zandberg, a MK representing the Meretz Party. During her tenure, she has served as chair of the Committee on Women's Rights. Nice going. A dear friend, Alan Solo, is the former chair of the Conference of Presidents of major American Jewish organizations and has been an indispensable and close supporter and advisor to the Obama administration on the Jewish community and Israeli affairs. He served as national campaign co-chair for the 2012 Obama-Biden presidential campaign. On a personal note, he's a dear and trusted, valued advisor to J Street and a dear friend of mine. Demographer Stephen Cohen is the research professor of Jewish social policy at HUC JIR and director of the Berman Jewish Policy Archive at Stanford University. Please join me in welcoming our distinguished panel.
Good evening. Well, the main thing that changed since the last time I was here at the J Street conference 2 years ago is obviously the election of Donald Trump as President of the United States, which has enormous implications for everything that we're dealing with, Israeli-American relationship, the relationship between Jews in the diaspora, especially in America and Israel, the policies of the Israeli government domestically, Israeli-Palestinian relationship, the future, if there is any, of the peace process, regional affairs, you name it. Now it's already the 6th week of Trump in office, and I can see 3 ways of explaining, analyzing, predicting what happened, what's going to happen. One is the Trump equals Bibi equation, which is very popular among members of the Israeli right wing, and especially Israeli newspaper. They celebrate Trump's victory as a victory of nationalism, which they see, the Israeli right as the local equivalent of Trumpism, of Brexit, of rising nationalism in Europe, etc. They feel that they are on the right side of history at this point in time. The caveat in this is that as much as the shared feeling is going on, we could see that Trump is not exactly fulfilling the pledges he made to the Israeli right wing during his campaign. Last time I drove through Ayarkon Street in Tel Aviv, I saw the American embassy still there and not in Jerusalem. And the way he spoke about settlements was also less than the way Naftali Bennett and other leaders of the right wing in Israel celebrated after the American election when they said, well, now everything is off limits, let's just build, do whatever we want in the territories, two-state solution is gone, and so on. The second school of thought is what I call the Rhett Butler doctrine of Trump. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. Two-state, one state, do whatever you want, leave me alone, spare me the details. Well, here you have the authority himself saying it when he stood next to our Prime Minister a couple of weeks ago here in Washington. But then again, if he couldn't care less about it, why appoint his son-in-law? Why talk about this, the mother of all deals that is prepared to do in the Middle East? Why appoint his son-in-law as his envoy rather than not appointing anyone or some retiree like President Obama did with former Senator Mitchell? Why bother? And again, or if you don't care about two-state, one state, which implies that we're going to one state by default, why 24 hours later send your UN envoy to say that the US is still committed to two states? And last but not least, we have what I call the Barack Hussein Trump school of thought, which says that the Trump administration, again, regardless of whatever changes and revolutions and reforms is trying to do in the United States domestically or in some of America's foreign relations, on our issue, it's continuity from previous Democrats and Republican administrations together, and you could see it in the pledge to promote the peace process, in the way he told Netanyahu to restrain settlement activity, which, unlike President Obama, who said it in his first meeting with Netanyahu 8 years ago, behind closed doors. In public, he didn't say anything. I remember covering that visit, that only the day after the meeting, someone in Netanyahu's delegation leaked to us the fact that Obama demanded total settlement freeze. Now, Trump said it on stage next to Netanyahu, and at least other people in the administration, in their continued pledge to two states, remind us that there is continuity in American policy. So we don't know. It's still pretty much open. Each theory has its caveats. And I can't think of a better group of people to discuss these things. And one other question that's hanging up in the air is, and I think is pretty much relevant to this forum, is the Trump election, the rise of Trump, the turning point in the relationship between the American Jewish community and the State of Israel? Is it the total end of any dream, concept, idea of bipartisan support to Israel? And can the American Jewish community, that by and large voted for Clinton, and many of its members stand at the forefront of opposition to Trump and whatever he stands for, can it still relate to an Israeli government that presents itself as pro-Trump in the same way it did before? Omer, do you share the idea that the Israeli right wing and Trump's America are the same, and that you represent a different side of the aisle and a different set of values, and that there's no way back?
I don't know if there's no way back. I'm sure that the right wing in Israel hoped that once Trump will be in office, he will approve annexation, he will improve building wherever in the West Bank. And as you mentioned, in his first speech, when Netanyahu was beside him, first he said the very worst sentence. He said, one state or two state, I don't care as long as you get to an agreement. And I just want to say it over here loud and clear. One state means the end of Zionism. And the purpose of Zionism, the reason that we are in Israel is that Israel should be and will be the homeland for the Jewish people, and in order to be the homeland for the Jewish people, it has to be a secure, democratic state with a clear Jewish majority. And that's why we have to, from our point of view, to separate from the Palestinians. The outcome would be probably a Palestinian state. So when President Trump said that, I think that maybe even I hope I'm not naive, but even some intellectuals at the right understood that we are going to crash at a certain point in the future. Apart from this sentence, all the rest things he said was in a way a continuation of the previous administration. He said, I want peace between Israel and Palestinians. You won't find today many Israelis or Palestinians that are using the word peace. He said that there will be difficult compromises on two sides, and he bent to Netanyahu and asked him in humor, I hope you understand that. And then, as a question to one of the Israeli reporters, he said, well, I hope that Israel will stop building in the West Bank for a while. And of course, he didn't see the differences between within the blocks or out of the blocks. So if
He's learning it now.
Yes, so I think the right wing in Israel understand that their dream once Trump gets into office will not come true. And I think we already saw it in the 24, 48 hours that Netanyahu was in Israel when he came back, between his coming back from the States to flying to Australia. He already gave some hints that Israel will not be able to build a new settlement for the settlers that were moved from Amona. And I don't think things are going to be very good for the right. I don't think things are going to be very good for the left as well. So I don't have any too positive statements to say this evening.
Pessimism. Phil, as you know only too well, the main tool of Netanyahu in the past 6 years, vis-a-vis the United States, his main policy tool was to play Congress against President Obama. After the last election here, he lost that edge. He cannot play the Republicans against their own president. And even if the Democrats win back one of the houses in 2 years, I doubt that they would pick Netanyahu as their champion against President Trump. Does that give Trump an edge that was missing, that the outgoing president was missing in trying to promote peace? Can he really do anything?
I don't know if it gives Trump an edge. It certainly creates a problem for Netanyahu. I mean, we can get to Trump and what he would want an edge for, but for the Prime Minister, I think the challenge is, as much as we in the Obama administration in the United States differed with him, that was sometimes useful for him. And now I think it puts the ball squarely in his own court on the question of the Palestinians. He doesn't have the United States as a reason, even vis-a-vis his own cabinet, to explain why he can't do certain things like annexing Area C or expanding settlements without any constraint. And I think that's going to be awkward. Actually, one of the very first things I wrote when I left the administration and was no longer working on this issue and could speak publicly was precisely that stop looking at us as the United States. Everyone was wondering, is Obama going to go to the Security Council? Is he going to press harder on settlements? What is the U.S. going to do? Is Kerry going to present a plan? What's the next round? And those are all fair questions. But my response to a lot of that was, don't look at us. You Israelis have to figure out what the plan is. And I think so long as there was a question, or has been a question, what's Obama going to do? What's Kerry going to do? That takes some pressure off of the Israelis and the Israeli Prime Minister. And now, so to speak, without Barack Obama to kick around anymore, the question goes to the Prime Minister. What are you going to do? And it, I think, forces him to directly and more openly answer the question of what he believes on a two-state solution or not. Because when other members of the Israeli cabinet then say, why don't we annex? He has to give the answer. And it can't be, well, because relations with the United States would be interfered with. Now, that obviously depends where Trump goes with it. So it has to be, if he's going to push back against expanding settlements or annexing Area C or something like that, the answer can only be because it's not in Israel's interest. And that, I think, actually is a prerequisite for moving forward in a two-state solution, but it's a really awkward thing for Bibi.
Member of Knesset Hassan, you're the only representative of the Israeli coalition here. Does Netanyahu really want, from your assessment, does he really want this free hand to build, to annex, to throw the two-state, I don't want to say even solution idea, through the trash can, to be the real, true blue right-wing ideologist that he always wanted to be but wouldn't and couldn't?
Good evening, everybody. It's again great pleasure to be here, and it's not easy for somebody like me from the coalition to come and to be in these conversations, but to be open and to speak with you that nobody knows what Netanyahu wants. And especially after the meeting 3 weeks ago here in the state, when Trump decided not to decide. What he said to Netanyahu, one state, two states, go to the Palestinian, and what you going to decide, I will agree with that. Who will take care about our conversation with the Palestinian if Abu Mazen don't trust Netanyahu? And Netanyahu told us every morning that Abu Mazen support terror. For that, I think that we have a new policy. It's give us not a good future, and I am worried from this policy. I will tell you that Netanyahu said before many years in Bar Ilan agreement that he believed in two states for two nations. And now he said different things. I came from a social party with my boss, Moshe Kahlon, the finance minister, and we are social. We support also the Palestinian. We believe in that, and we start to give the money back to the Palestinian, especially the tax money. And we met the finance minister sometimes, and I believe that we will make some steps with the Palestinian by economical peace. If Netanyahu will not move anything, maybe we can give some hope for the Palestinian, because if the young generation get up every morning and they don't have any hope, and they don't have nothing to lose, they will take knives and guns and come to kill us. For that, we change our way and we try to support. But like you said, Netanyahu returned to Israel, and what he told us, that Trump gave him all the possibilities to do, and we don't know the truth. Some people in America say that Trump asked him not to build anymore in the West Bank. But we have inside the coalition also the Jewish home, like Bennett and like Lieberman and another ministers in the Likud party. They are living in the West Bank. And they say that we have the green light now, we can start building again. If Netanyahu and our government feel that we can have a new relation with the Arab countries, with Arab Saudi and Emirates and all these countries, and to leave now the case of the Palestinian, I think it will not work. It will not give us any hope, because no great leaders that can go under the table with open mind and say, okay, we will start new relations with Israel.
But can the coalition sustain serious effort towards peace with the Palestinians, or will it break down?
I tell you the truth that I am now 1 year in the parliament, and also I was member in the Knesset in 2012. And from that time, I don't feel anything happened with the coalition about the Palestinian case. It means that it's not so important for our coalition. And it's very hard. We are 66 members. We thought that if Bougie Herzog with his party will be inside the coalition, we will move the peace process with the Palestinian. But we lost that chance, and now nobody knows. And maybe you will ask me, if you like the Palestinian people and you want to make a peace, why you don't go to the election? Nobody proved for us that if we will go to the election tomorrow, we will change the results in Israel, because most of the people going to the right, because of the security. We reach the news every day. What Netanyahu and the minister said, that we are worried from Iran. We have terror with Hezbollah. We have terror with Hamas. We have problems in the Palestinian side. We have a lot of problems in Syria. And the civilian people in Israel, they are very worried. For that, they're going to the right side. And we're going to lose, I think, the best chance to have peace process. And I think that because Israel, it's a very strong country with a strong army, economical also very strong, and we have high technology. We must move the peace with the Palestinian. But from my experience, it's very hard to do it in Netanyahu time.
Member of Knesset Zandberg, in the past 2 years, the main political debates within Israel, we have to acknowledge, were not about the Palestinians or about the peace process. They were about democracy. They were about kind of domestic revolution, that the Netanyahu's choice of a very right-wing coalition was meant not to build settlements, but to, as they call it, to change the elites, to purge the media, to purge academia, to make any criticism of the occupation less and less legitimate, and most recently to change the composition of the Supreme Court in order to make it more conservative, less open to appeals, and less open to challenge the government authority and definitely Knesset legislation. And now we feel that our liberal friends here share similar concerns. Do you see an opportunity here of a bridge between liberals in Israel and in America, especially in the Jewish community?
Definitely. First of all, I think we can all see the similarities between the two leaders. Maybe we can even say that Bibi was ahead of his time in a way. Both of them has, prosecution against the media, the free media, incitement against minorities, even anti-Semitism. We have seen even today the vandalizing of graves in a cemetery, and you don't hear a word from the leader of the Jewish state.
They actually criticized it. This one, not the previous.
We heard it was a comment from the foreign minister, but the prime minister, again, the leader of the place that was supposed to be the asylum for all Jews around the world, and it seems like now there's a new policy. It's okay to hate the Jews as long as you hate Muslims even more, which is of course something that is not acceptable, because our shared views was supposed to be the exact opposite. The history of the persecution of the Jewish people was supposed to be about creating a safer world for everybody, for all minorities, for all nations, genders, etc. Now, I see here an opportunity, actually, or a lesson in two ways for us as a political camp. One, as you said in the beginning, I think it's very clear that the right wing on both sides of the ocean made it a thing about an alliance between political camps rather than an alliance between countries. You talked about the bipartisan support in Israel. I think it's very clear that we have a lesson here to go back to our shared values. What does it mean to be a political left in the US and what does it mean to be political left in Israel. I think that what you are experiencing right now is that politics does not begin and end on election day in the polls, but there's a whole routine of what does it mean to be politically involved, to be a patriot, activist, and to have not only the right, but also the obligation to be involved and engaged in politics, in the streets, in demonstrations, in town hall meetings, in political organizing, online organizing, whatever. And we have, I think, strengthening the alliance between the Israeli left and the American left is something very, very important, because supporting Israel means supporting what is good for Israel and not necessarily supporting in any wrong policy of Israeli elected government. True, it was elected, but you know, Trump was elected as well, but that does not mean we go home and rest. We fight and we resist and we fight for our values, and we have shared values here. That's one lesson. Another lesson that is also very, very important is that a confident left is a winning left. I think for years, you know, Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream." He did not say, "I have a strategy." And that is because the politics of dreams and of vision and what we would like to see is much more enthusiasm, much more, you know, exciting than listening to to advisor or a strategic consultant. And for us, for years, we have kind of, you know, switched the righteousness of our values and the righteousness of the polls and what strategic advice we get from this American advisor or the other. And I think we, you know, and these advisors keep telling us, you know, you have to shift to the right a little bit. Don't say everything you think. Don't annoy anybody. This is how you're going to win, and once you win, you will know what to do. Now, I think the lesson here is we won't know, and we won't get there unless we go back to what we believe in, unless we fight for our dreams, for our mutual vision, for our beloved country. And now we see that it's, you know, all over countries.
Unless we have a story to tell, not just, you know, the dream that some general or some other magician will come and win an election.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that if we go that way, it might have, you know, there are no shortcuts. It might look like it's a long way to go. But we see now that starting from grassroots politics and climbing our way up all the way to the Prime Minister's office and to ending the occupation and bringing social justice and civil rights to our country that's the only way to do it. And I think that, as you said, the last years in Israel have been about, you know, political prosecution and about trying to change the rules for NGOs, and occupation opposers seem to be the worst enemy. Not because we are so marginalized and we are so not effective and not important. The other way around is true, because we are the #1 threat to the policy of occupying and settlements. And that's something we have to remember. Sometimes we lack the self-confidence that the right wing sees in us. They know we are a threat to their policy, and that is true. But we have to behave like we know that, because if we don't have faith in ourselves, nobody is going to put his or her faith in us.
Alan, given the growing polarization in the American political scene, which, you know, it did not begin with the last election. It's a process that's been going on for several years. Could we really delude ourselves to believe that Israel could, or support for Israel, or Zionism, or whatever name you want to call it, could somehow be isolated from this process, that America could be polarized over each and every issue, but Israel is in the safe and nobody could touch it? Or was it just a delusion that now is for all to see that you cannot keep it this way?
Well, I don't think it's one or the other. I don't think that it has been as universal as we'd like to pretend that it has been. And I also don't think that we're going to see a total disappearance of bipartisan efforts in support of Israel. And here's why. First of all, Israel will continue to be an issue that can garner bipartisan support as long as Israel has a strong narrative that is supported by the facts, that is a moral, ethical, principle-based position as to why the Jewish people have a right to be secure in their own homeland and protect their own future and live under their own rule. As long as Israel stands by that position, that is a position that can and will garner bipartisan support. Now, the threat to that bipartisan support, I think, over the course of the last several decades has been that the Republican Party in particular and the right side of the Republican Party has tried to use Israel as a wedge issue in order to separate Jewish voters from Democrats, because Jews have been, next to African Americans, the most loyal supporters of Democratic candidates for the period since Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And that's been a thorn in the side of the Republicans. So they have tried to use some type of a super rightist Israel position in order to try to pull Jews away from the Democrats. Hasn't worked. It hasn't worked primarily because while every American politician who runs for serious office has had to make the case that they are pro-Israel, they have to meet some baseline definition of what it means to be pro-Israel, and it would be along the lines of the one I discussed before. Then other issues become more important to them in determining how they vote. They care about the economy, they care about education, they care about social justice, they care about lots of things. As long as the candidate is okay on Israel, that's good enough. So the Republicans have not been able to peel away that support, and frankly, I don't think they're going to be able to peel it away in the future. So the bottom line is there's going to be continued efforts to try to tear apart that bipartisanship. It's going to have some effect, but what we've seen over the course of the last several elections is it really doesn't work. The Democratic Party still has a strong pro-Israel wing. Republican Party has a different philosophy, I think, a little bit about what it means to be pro-Israel, but in a broad sense, I think we'll continue to see bipartisanship. Let me say one other thing on this, Aloof. I do think that there is a danger that if the Israeli government falls in too closely with an American government that is very unpopular with American Jewry, that will threaten the relationship between the diaspora and Israel. And that is a danger to, I think, the state, because I think that the support of American Jewry is a strategic asset to Israel. And if we begin to lose that strategic asset, then we could see some breakdown in the bipartisanship.
Steve, let's move from the candidates and politicians and members of Congress, etc., to grassroots. What if Israel is safe and secure and its army gets even stronger, and it's not even the best buddy of Donald Trump, and there is friction between Trump and Netanyahu, but Israel turns away from its democratic and liberal foundations? How would that affect the support, especially of a younger generation of American Jews who, to whom the Holocaust is now stories of grandparents, great-grandparents?
So basically,
is that going to change the equation that?
Well, it depends for whom. There are two types of people in the world: those who divide the world into two, and those who don't. So, to understand the American Jewry, we have to divide them into three. Orthodox Jews on one hand, nominal episodic Jews on the other, and committed non-Orthodox Jews in the middle. The two wings of American Jewry are growing. So now to get back to your question, If Israel moves further to the right and is consonant with a Trump-Putin regime in Washington, then there's no question that the Orthodox will continue to heavily support Trump and Bibi and Israel, along with older ethnic Jews, Russian Jews, many Israeli Jews, and Persian Jews, and for first-generation Jews here, as well as the Orthodox, which comprises the 20%, 25% who consistently vote Republican and voted for Trump this time. The other group, these nominal episodic Jews who are growing, let's remember that of Jews 18 to 29 who are not Orthodox, 60% of them, who are still Jewish, have a non-Jewish parent. And having a non-Jewish parent, and certainly also being married to a non-Jew, are strong predictors of, what did you say, I don't give a damn? Or the
Red Butler.
Red Butler. I'm not familiar with American culture like you are, but yeah, that's...
It wasn't Jewish.
But Red Butler Jews are growing in number, and among the things they really don't care about is they don't care about Israel. So the question you have to ask for them is like, Israel this way, Israel that way, it doesn't matter to them. So now you have liberal, politically liberal, non-Orthodox Jews who are many of the people in this room, except for, I think there are 5 Orthodox people sitting in that row over there. Some of my best friends are Orthodox. I even work for an Orthodox. Let's go on. Maybe not tomorrow, but right now I do. So for those people, they're going to be we are in a bind because we have to create also a third way to relate to Israel. Right now, and we're doing it. Right, we have 2 ways: support Israel or dismiss Israel and oppose the government. We need to create another public space which says, we love Israel, we're loyal to Israel, and we detest its government and its policies.
But would you work?
Can we create that space and make it a recognized third alternative, which and this is one of the other things I've noticed, this is the youngest Jewish convention I've been to since I was a Jewish student activist in the late 60s, early 1970s. And that gives the people in this room a hell of a lot of moral authority with American Jewry, who has got another concern, which is that our young people should stay Jewish. So here we're saying we have young people who are not Orthodox, who are staying Jewish, who are staying Jewishly involved, but on one condition: they love Israel and they detest its policies. That's the price of admission.
And does that include trying to affect or promote or support political change within Israel, or those who work for it within Israel?
It's if J Street and its many allies, Amenu and so forth, don't look like they're trying to be effective in really making a difference in the world, then that they can't continue to have support. So they at least have to look like they're making a difference in Israeli politics. It would even be better if they actually made a difference in Israeli politics. But we certainly have to see J Street, Amenu, and the others, if not now, so try to change Israeli policy towards one outcome. When we keep talking about the 2-state solution, let's translate that for the creation of a Palestinian state alongside of Israel. That's what that means. And our voices need to be very clear about that. Not just, maybe there'll be a Palestinian state, maybe there'll be compromise of Palestinians. We have to say, we want to see the creation of a Palestinian state, not only because of our values, which is very kind of liberal universalist talk, but because we care about the safety of our Jewish people in Israel and around the world. That's another reason why we want a Palestinian state.
So, Omer, as representative of the largest opposition party in Israel, what dream do you have to share with this audience as an alternative to the government's narrative, which is, use force and more force and trust nobody in the region, and everybody's out to get Israel, and the rest of the world is anti-Semitic, and the two-state solution is a nice thing to say in cocktails, but it's not practical.
I can say it in two words, two ways, one very short and one long. The very short one is that Netanyahu will not be the next Prime Minister of Israel. And I don't think I have to elaborate on that. I think Zionism from its first days was led by leaders that understood that the march forward is not easy. You know, if Zionism was Israel is called a startup nation. If Zionism was today a startup, I don't think we could find any investor that would invest in that startup. Because Zionism from its first days went against all odds. And I think in a way this is the most optimistic thing I can say, because I believe that although we are passing for a very long time, at least 10 years, some may say more, very difficult times, and not only regarding Israel and the Palestinians. I think you mentioned the democratic situation, the liberal situation in Israel. I can tell you, this is my second term in the Knesset. This Knesset is much worse than the previous one.
In what sense?
In sense that hatred is in within the benches in the Knesset. People from the right gets against people from the left. People from the right gets against Israeli Arabs. Democracy is being cut slice by slice. Almost every week, another bill is passed that is cutting democracy. We of course all know about the bill regarding Amona, which I hope that would not pass the Supreme Court, but this is only an example. Another issue, for instance, regarding the gas issue in Israel, doesn't matter if you are for it or against, but Netanyahu changed the responsibility in order to pass what he wanted to pass. He first said, for instance, it's a security issue, and then if it's a security issue, it is dealt in the security cabinet, and if it's dealt in the security cabinet, there is an option to overcome certain obstacles that otherwise can't be done. And this is everything, the law against NGOs, the law against assisting Israeli NGOs with financing, but not against all international financing, and so on. So Israeli democracy is being cut, and of course I didn't mention the ultra-Orthodox issues regarding more liberal issues regarding religions. So
what's the alternative that you're presenting?
Having said all that, I'm an optimist. I think if I wasn't an optimist and a little bit naive, I wouldn't go into politics. And as I said in the beginning, I believe Zionism never said, well, we can't do this or we can't do that because we don't have a partner. If we don't have a partner, we do it ourselves. If we don't have a certain partner, we find another partner. But Zionism never blamed others for not being able to going forward with its vision. And I think the Zionist vision is stronger than everyone. And the Zionist vision will succeed and will continue to lead Israel after these bad years that we are having now.
Phil, when you look at the broader region, You know, the new bon ton of everybody is the regional approach, and, you know, our new friends, the Saudis and the Emiratis, and my colleague Barak Ravid just exposed the secret summit between Netanyahu, Kerry, King Abdullah of Jordan, and President Sisi in Egypt a year ago. Is there really any feeling that something new is cooking in the region? That the outcome of the Arab Spring turmoil might turn positive? Give an umbrella to some development on the Israeli-Palestinian stage?
Yeah, well, those are two separate questions, whether post-Arab Spring Arab world will turn positive and is something cooking with Israel. Unfortunately, the first is unlikely. If you mean by turn positive, these states, you know, getting their institutions back, democratizing, settling down, stabilizing, unfortunately there, it probably gets worse before it gets better. That's a different, and you know, we could spend an hour on that. What is true is that these Arab states, at least in particular those whose leadership has not changed, you know, obviously, you know, set aside for now Yemen, Syria, Libya, and so on, but the ones that have been mentioned here, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, they are indeed forging closer ties with Israel. And that is
Why?
true.
What do they find in Netanyahu's Israel that we fail to acknowledge here?
A common enemy. I mean, that's what, first of all, the Israeli-Palestinian issue for them is now way down the list. It used to be near the top of the list. And if an American official had a meeting with Gulf or Egyptian or Jordanian counterparts, it would start with the Israeli-Palestinian issue and then go on to the region. That is now inversed to the point that you frankly barely get to the Israelis and Palestinians with these leaders. That is not their top concern. When they have Iran and Syria disintegrating and a war going on in Yemen and ISIS and terrorism and all of that, the Israeli-Palestinian issue is not their top priority. But it's also in part the case that Israel is not their primary concern or enemy, and it's not their people's primary concern or enemy. They do have a common enemy, namely Iran, which aligns them strategically. So in that sense, this new dynamic that everybody wants to talk about and that the Prime Minister brought up and President Trump brought up is true, and it's important, and it's good, but it's also not the magical solution to the Palestinian question. And that's my concern about the way people talk about it, and frankly, even the way President Trump talks about it, because you got the impression he only just heard about it, right? Bibi came and said, we want to do outside in, and he was briefed on outside in. He's very excited that suddenly we can do this. And frankly, a lot of people who have even looked at the issue more carefully are very excited about it. But it is not going, these leaders are not going to get out in front of the Palestinians and force them to do a deal that they otherwise wouldn't do. And there is a risk, including for people who meet with them privately, in thinking they're hearing the right thing, and that's going to be the ticket. But especially because this is not their top priority, it's not the magic solution. It's good, we should work on it. Israel should be pleased that they're no longer so hostile to Israel, should be pleased that they want to find a solution. But it doesn't get any of us, including the Prime Minister of Israel or the President of the United States, out of the difficult business of figuring out a real solution to the Palestinian issue. And that's my concern, is that it gets used as the substitute for the really hard things that have to be done.
Akram, you told me that you met recently with another Arab leader, President Abbas, who doesn't share this new affiliation with Netanyahu as other Arab leaders. Why? What's on his mind? You told me that you asked him why won't he come to the Knesset. Can you elaborate?
6 months ago, I visited him in his office in Ramallah, and I invited him to come to the Israeli Knesset. I told him that you have more than 60 members that I know from the Knesset. They will welcome him. Maybe the Knesset members will move the peace process with the Palestinian. And he told me very clear and very open that it's impossible for him, because 1 year before he came to Netanyahu's house And he only stayed like 15 minutes and after that left because he saw that Netanyahu changed his mind and all his promise to him. And he said today, if I will go, what I will tell my people, that they see every day, every morning, I see from my windows the Israeli army in area A. And you know the agreement with the Palestinian that no army will be in area A. Secondly, if we will see that they continue building in the West Bank, who will support me? And you know that we have Islamic Jihad inside the West Bank. We have Hamas. We have also some members from Fatah that they are against me. They don't believe any relation with Israel. And after that, I will lose everything. I will be alone. And I will not take any results. And he also told me one secret thing that when he spoke with John Kerry several times, and he said that some people invite me to come to Israel and to meet Netanyahu, and Kerry refused. He say, if you will go alone, you will lose, and you know exactly which results you will have. For that, don't move without the agreement of the White House, and especially Obama. We see also that last time France decided to have a conference for peace, and Abbas was not there. Also Netanyahu was not there. Also the President Putin tried to do something. I think Abbas, he feel very bad, and he feel alone. And, but I am sure that if some leaders from the Arab countries say to Israel or to everybody, we heard about this cooperation between the Arab countries and Israel, I think Abbas knows very well that nobody from the Arab leaders will go alone without the Palestinian case. First of all, the Arabs, they are worried. Every leader from the Arab countries, they are worried. He don't need any revolution inside his country. And we speak about the Arab winters, not Arab spring, what happened there. And everybody also worry about the Islamic Jihad and about what happened with Iran and what happened with Daesh. For that, maybe now the mentality of all the Arab countries to be very close to Israel and to defense against all these fanatic groups. But in fact, nobody will go and say, okay, I will lead the peace. I will start a new relation with Israel, and after that, we will continue with the Palestinian. This is what Netanyahu thought, because in the beginning, when we start with Oslo speaking about the first step with the Palestinian, after that with another 57 Arab and Muslims countries. This time it will not work, and I am not optimist about the future. I hope maybe the president of the State of America will change his mind, and he will tell also Netanyahu and Abbas, I give you 100 days and nothing happened. Now I will continue and I will do the hard job that you will sit in the same table and start again.
Tamar, going back to your dream, if you had to pick one issue to dream about and fight over, what would it be?
Well, of course, it would be stopping the Israeli occupation over the West Bank and the Palestinian people. I think this is the #1 threat for the sustainability of the State of Israel, and also a moral threat for the Israel that we would like to see. You know, the Declaration of Independence talked about the vision of the prophets of Israel, and also about the ability of building Chevrat Mofet, you know, an example society that we would all like to live in the light of. We are not doing that for too long. And we can do that, and we should do that. And I think right now in Israel, fighting against the occupation has become, you know, you need to fight over the right to fight. The narrowing space for democracy and freedom of speech, freedom of the media, and of course the courts are in, even the military, when the high-rank generals assess that continuing occupying is not sustainable, they're being shut down as leftists. There are guests here from Breaking the Silence, from B'Tselem, from Peace Now. Yeah, they should. I think these relatively small but very brave civil society organizations with a very few supporters in the political system that are being marginalized and trying to intentionally being pushed aside, the fact that we annoy them so much is because we are correct, and they know that. And this is why, actually, my call, you know, we sit in a political family here. And I don't think we have any, you know, anything to do with, of course, the Prime Minister and the right-wing organizations, of course, the settlers movement and the settlers lobby. You know, for them, nothing needs to be changed. My call is for us, for the senior leaders and speakers of our camp. Yes, we have been pushed aside, and now it's almost a political, you know, threat to be affiliated or identifying with the left in Israel. But don't keep your silence, you know, break the silence. Because we are, you know, we're not going to win by thinking that, you know, from some reason something is going to change from somewhere. It is our job. We are the people we've been waiting for. And I'm sure that with self-confidence and belief in our values, in their righteousness, and in the fact that they can actually win politically, we can do that. It's not that complicated. It's very, very easy. All we need to do is believe in ourselves and go do it.
Ellen, are we going to see some of the established Jewish organizations in the United States, those who would not accept J Street at their table, are we going to see some breaking of the silence on their part vis-a-vis an Israeli government and its policies? What would it take to get there?
I think it's increasingly likely. And I think that it's increasingly likely because of some of the factors that we've discussed earlier this evening. If the Prime Minister loses the shield that he's had of a president with whom he doesn't agree in order to defend himself, and he has a free hand to move forward and take positions that are in direct contrast to what the overwhelming number of American Jews feel, it will be very hard for many of the mainstream organizations to maintain their uniform support of the government of the State of Israel. Look, I had one of these jobs for several years, and I understand the importance of respecting the decisions of Israeli voters to pick a government. We in the United States shouldn't second guess the decisions of Israeli voters. By the way, I wish the same thing were true in the other direction. Didn't always work that way, but be that as it may, my responsibility was to be respectful of that. But I think that that respect goes primarily to issues surrounding security. That is to say, it's very difficult for us here in the United States to look at decisions by an Israeli government that are security-based and to second-guess those. However, I think we could get in the near future to a situation where the cover is blown and it's no longer about security. It is about a decision by the right in Israel to press for annexation based on philosophical grounds, not on security grounds. And when that happens, you'll begin to see organizations peel away. Just like we saw earlier this week where the Union of Reform Judaism has now made a statement that they don't support confirmation of President Trump's appointee as ambassador to Israel. Now, that organization is a mainstream organization that probably represents more American Jews than anybody else that's a member of the Conference of Presidents of major American Jewish organizations. And that's a position which they ordinarily would not have taken. But when you have a proposed appointee who takes positions that are pro-annexation, that don't have merely to do with security issues, it becomes easier to separate out the importance of being respectful of Israeli democracy from being true to fundamental Jewish beliefs of fairness and justice, and also, as the other panelists have pointed out, what is ultimately in the interest of Israel and the Jewish people. So I would say there's one other point to be made here. When the decisions are about things that Israel has to do about its neighbors and they affect Israel politically, it's easy to defer. When they're about the future of Zionism and the future of the Jewish people, which Israel has a central but not exclusive role in, then it becomes a time when I think American Jewry and diaspora Jewry as a whole not only has the right to speak out about, but the obligation to speak out about. And so for somebody like myself, who is an establishment figure in many ways, when I see us doing damage to the Zionist dream by deferring to a government which doesn't have confidence in the Jewish people, which doesn't see itself as the solution to the problem. I mean, what I like to say is, we're supposed to be the smart ones. I mean, we have a problem which is not going to go away by virtue of the fact that we don't have an alleged partner for peace. The problem will remain. We need to fix it for our own accord. And if we move away from efforts to do that, I think you will begin to see a breakage of this uniform alliance in support of the Israeli government.
Steve, you know, you travel back and forth quite a lot for quite many years. Do Israelis and American Jews really understand each other's concerns, or are we becoming more and more separate planets, like the new planetary system that's just been discovered?
Are we becoming more and more, sorry?
Like separate planets that don't really speak the same language.
You didn't read my book, 1990, with Charles Liebman, called Two Worlds of Judaism, but
well, that's homework.
I recommend that. But
Might have forgotten.
Yeah, might have forgotten.
Post-panel
No,
homework.
Alan, I know looked at it very closely, but we said there in 1990 that Israeli and American Jews have a different demographic and religious origin. More Orthodox Jews came to Israel from other parts of the country. Post-Soviet Jews are in Israel. So the demographic origins are different, number one. The concentration of Jews in Israel is quite different, obviously, than the dispersal in the United States. And we have different Gentiles. So in America, we have Gentiles who love us, and we love them. In Israel, with the exception of Dalia al-Carmel and a few other places, we think we have Gentiles who hate us and want to kill us. So that leads both societies to have a very different relationship with the world, very different relationship to larger politics. So, and they have a very different relationship. So they have been moving in very different directions. And the other thing is
bridgeable?
Is it bridgeable? Counterparts, and then we all spoke about this, but our counterparts, Orthodox and Orthodox, liberal and liberal, can actually affect relationships. The Orthodox have done it to their credit. Liberal Jews largely have not done it as anywhere near as well, to our discredit. And part of what we need to do is actually, in a different context, to reach out to the Orthodox and others who don't share our views, to bring them into this conversation. I just want to say one thing. About half an hour ago, Alan said, I'm really not worried that much about the bipartisan relationship, except if this happens, that happens. I just want to say that, and I think you've reported on this, I would watch very closely the polls of Democrats and liberals in America. And they have been turning against Israel, quote unquote, but we can dispute the question, very dramatically in the last year or two. And Israelis, I mean, for the good of our, for the bad of the relationship, but for the good of our issue, we need to let Israelis know you're already losing the young and the left wing of America. Maybe it'll spread, maybe it won't, maybe it'll stop, but right now there are losses already on the table. And if this policy pursues and continues, we're risking the rest of the support of America, except for certain precincts. So I think that news that has already shown up on the horizon needs to be emphasized, and we need to watch this trend extremely closely.
Well, here's a challenge to all of us here. I want to thank the panelists. Time's up. Thank you, and good luck to us all. We have a dream.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Vice Chair of J Street's Board of Directors and a leader of the organization's Women's Leadership Forum, Carol Winograd.
Hi, I'm Carol Winograd, and I'm Vice Chair of the J Street Board of Directors and co-founder and member of the steering committee of J Street Women's Leadership Forum. I'm proud, yay! I'm proud to represent J Street tonight and to introduce our next very impressive speaker. Ayman Odeh is a member of Knesset from the Hadash party. And the head of the Joint List, which is the third largest faction of the current Knesset. At a time when we are all wondering, how are we going to stand up and fight against the forces threatening peace and democracy, MK Odeh inspires us to build and sustain a powerful and principled opposition movement. In the 2015 election, MK Odeh was instrumental in building the unprecedented Joint List, the political alliance between the Arab parties that had not existed before. In that year, he was also named one of the top 100 leading global thinkers by Foreign Policy magazine. His tenure as Joint List leader has been marked by struggle and conflict. Israeli Arab communities have faced increased harassment and incitement from both the Israeli government and extremist groups. An uptick in home demolitions has driven many Arab citizens from their homes and frequently isolated them from the Israeli society. MK Odeh has the courage to put his own body on the line and bear witness to punitive home demolitions. Just over a month ago, during a protest against demolition of the el-Haran Bedouin village, Israeli police fired a rubber bullet that wounded him in the head and caused significant bleeding. Nonetheless, MK Odeh continues to urge tolerance and Jewish-Arab solidarity. He fiercely defends the rights of his community, promotes nonviolent resistance, and insists that Israel live up to its founding values. Indeed, the Israeli Declaration of Independence, as we all know, proclaims that Israel should be a state for all its people. Confronting deep wrongs in Israel today, MK Oda is providing a hopeful vision for progress and a better way forward. In the New York Times a few weeks ago, he wrote, quote, "In this moment, it is our moral responsibility to build a principled opposition strong enough to overpower the politics of hate and fear," unquote. Continuing, he said, "I will continue to work toward a just and democratic shared future." It's my honor, deep honor, really, to introduce Member of Knesset, Ayman Oda.
Thank you. Thank you. My friends, good evening. مساء الخير أيها الأصدقاء. عرف طوف خبريم. Thank you for inviting me to talk with you at the J Street conference tonight. Late one night, just last month, Yaqub Abu al-Qi'an, a math teacher from the small village of al-Hiran in the Negev, heard that his village was about to be demolished. In the dark, before dawn, he took a stack of papers to grade, told his relatives that he would be at his mother's house in a town nearby, and got into his car. Yaqub never made it to his mother's house. As he drove out of the village, past hundreds of fully armed police officers who had arrived to destroy the village, police officers shot and killed him. His car hit and killed Officer Erez Levy. That night, last month, was just another terrible chapter in a much larger story, one of discrimination and segregation, of desperation and cruelty. It is a story of a type of power, fueled by hate, that is growing in Israel, in America, and all over the world. And it is a story that gets to the heart of the challenge that faces us and the real opposition and resistance we must build. In the Negev, there are 35 Arab villages that are officially unrecognized by the state. More than 100,000 people, Arab Palestinian citizens of Israel, live there with no water or electrical infrastructure, no paved roads, and no school system. al-Hiran is one of these villages. 15 years ago, the government decided to destroy al-Hiran, remove its Arab residents and erase its Arab name, and build a Jewish town called Hiran in its place. The leaders of the village tried to reach a compromise with the government so that their community would become a neighborhood within the new town. But the Netanyahu government rejected this compromise. They wanted Hiran to be for Jews only. al-Hiran is a place I hold close to my heart. A decade ago, just after I was elected as Secretary General of my political movement, Hadash, I went to my wife, Nardine, with a difficult request. I wanted to spend 1 month living in the unrecognized villages, including al-Hiran. My family has lived in Haifa for hundreds of years, but I wanted to create stronger connections to the communities of the South. Our oldest son, Tayyib, was a year old, and Nardine is a doctor with a busy schedule. It was a lot to ask, but she knew this was very important. She agreed on one condition. First, I had to spend 1 month covering all the housework. So I did. And then I went to the Negev. I went from village to village, talking to people about their lives, their families, and their struggles. Our sisters and brothers in the Negev are the most oppressed in the country. Their struggle to live with dignity and equal rights must be central to our collective struggle for a just and democratic future. That's why we, at the Joint List, have made the struggle of the unrecognized villages a centerpiece of our platform and our work. My first initiative after the election was to organize a march from the unrecognized villages to Jerusalem. Together with residents of the unrecognized villages and my colleagues at the Joint List, with students and with citizen activists, we delivered our plan for recognizing the villages directly to the President's house. But of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu never considered our plan. Instead, his extreme right-wing government moved ahead with its own plans to demolish the villages. So, in that night, just a few weeks ago, when we heard the demolition of the village had been ordered, cutting off negotiations that were very close to final, I drove to al-Hiran right away. In the dark, I heard gunshots fired, shots that I later learned were the ones that killed Yaqub Abu al-Qi'an. In the confusion, I tried to get closer. I identified myself to police as a member of Knesset, but I never got the chance. One officer sprayed pepper spray into my eyes. A moment later, the police shot me in my forehead and in my back with high-density foam-tipped bullets. Since we live in a post-truth era, the police immediately provided, as you call them in America, alternative facts. They say that I was hit by rocks thrown by my fellow protesters. They said that although many people saw what happened, although there were no reports of rock throwing, although the ground was covered in big black foam-tipped bullets, when they saw the results of a forensic medical examination I requested, the police lied again, saying they never gave any explanation about the cause of my injuries. I am sorry to say that it was even worse for Yaqub Abu al-Qi'an. Right away, the police falsely accused him of a terror attack against police officers. They spread the lie that he was connected to Daesh, ISIS, and in the days that followed, this story and all the claims put forward by police started to unravel, until all that is left are two grieving families. I will not accept a post-truth reality, not for me, not for Yaqub Abu al-Qi'an, not for al-Hiran, and not for the communities of the Negev. So let's speak the truth as a first step toward change. It is unacceptable that since the founding of the State of Israel, over 700 new towns have been built for Jews and none have been built for Arabs. It is unacceptable that there are 934 villages and towns that use admission committees to keep Arab families from moving in. It is unacceptable that children in the unrecognized villages sit in darkness and look out at the lights of the cowsheds at the kibbutzim nearby. And it is unacceptable that the Netanyahu government has turned housing policy into a political weapon against Palestinian citizens of Israel. And it is a moral outrage that Prime Minister Netanyahu would use the destruction of homes in the Arab town of Kalansawa in central Israel and the destruction of a whole community in the Negev as retribution, a prize to his extreme right-wing supporters in return for the evacuation of an illegal settlement built on stolen Palestinian land in the occupied West Bank. All of this is part of Netanyahu's strategy to incite against Arab Palestinian citizens and to portray us not as citizens, but as enemies of the state. He incited against us for exercising our right to vote. He accused me for carrying an ISIS flag. He blamed Arabs for starting wildfires on Mountain Carmel, on the mountain where I was born, where my family has lived for generations, where my children were born and my relatives are buried. In Israel, around the world, and here in the United States, those who sit in the halls of power care only about their own power. Trump and Netanyahu have cemented their power in the same way regimes have throughout history, with the language of fear and a slow-burning hate by turning us against one another instead of reminding us of our shared values and our mutual interests. This is our challenge, but it isn't the only thing that stands in our way. We must have a bravery and conviction to create the future we envision, one of democracy and equality, of social justice and peace. We will never achieve it by copying from the old establishment playbook. This is the time for a real opposition, principled, fearless, and committed to liberation for all of us. An opposition led by a Labour Party that is no more than a shadow of the right wing is no opposition at all. They rob us of victory for our values. The Labour Party did nothing to stop the order to destroy al-Hiran and leave its residents homeless. It has abandoned the human rights organizations and civil society groups that the right-wing parties attack, and it is failed to provide any real leadership toward ending the occupation and resisting the extremist agenda of the right-wing government. We must hold them accountable, but we will not wait for them to step aside. They have called themselves the Zionist camp. The right wing calls itself the national camp. We, Arabs and Jews together, are building a new camp, a democratic camp. that has already begun to show the world what real principled and strong opposition looks like. I refuse to listen to those who say this is not possible. We build our power by exercising solidarity. Now is the time that we need our solidarity more than ever. When anti-Semitism and Islamophobia are growing in the halls of power and in the streets, we need our solidarity in this country when mosques are burned and when Jewish cemeteries are vandalized. We need our solidarity when the government attacks journalists and artists and the human rights defenders. And we need our solidarity, Palestinians and Israelis, to end the occupation. For 50 years, Palestinian children have been born under occupation. For 50 years, Palestinian parents have raised their families without the promise of determining their own future. For 50 years, Israelis have also paid a price as enforcers of the occupation. Engels wrote, "A nation that oppresses another nation cannot ever be free." Excuse me for disagreeing a bit. I don't think we have a whole nation oppressing another. I think we have a system that oppresses the people of both nations in service to the occupation. We must liberate both peoples from the prison of occupation. The Netanyahu government has stopped pretending that it ever intends to do so. For the first time this year, the government passed a law making it legal for Israeli settlers to steal private lands of Palestinians. Netanyahu wants to make it impossible to create an independent Palestinian state alongside Israel on the basis of the 1967 borders. I am convinced that there is a clear choice ahead of us: peace or apartheid. And I am convinced only a real and principled opposition based on solidarity and a shared struggle will enable us to choose peace. They are trying to divide and conquer, but we will unite and win. This will not be easy. We Palestinians must say that we are not against the existence of the state, and our Jewish partners must recognize the terrible tragedies of the Nakba around the creation of the state. We must be brave enough to take this step, and then we must work together toward our shared interests, which are not bound by our religions, our ethnicities, or our nationalities. We build our strength together, even when it isn't obvious, and even when it is hard, because social justice is good for all of us. That's why I march in solidarity with Ethiopian Jews to protest police violence. It is why we led and won the fight in increased state support to Holocaust survivors. It is why we work to pass legislation to benefit people with disabilities. Make no mistake, those who tell us our people cannot come together say this not because it is true, but because it serves their own cynical interests. They say it because they know that our shared future will be the end of their time in power. They are afraid, and they should be. Palestinian citizens of Israel alone do not have the power to bring about this future of democracy, equality, and peace. But no one can achieve democracy, equality, and peace without us. The right-wing government has chosen to make us part of the problem because they know we will be part of the solution. We are living in a moment of terrible hardship and a moment of great opportunity. You marched the day after inauguration to show that women will not accept violent words or violent acts or violent policies. You showed up at airports in New York, in Chicago, in Washington, D.C., in San Francisco, to show that the future is for all of us, that refugees are welcome, but racism and Islamophobia are not. And you showed up today because we know we cannot rely on the opposition we have, the one that is ready to sell out our values in exchange for power. In your homeland and in mine, we will create the kind of opposition that will resist the forces of cruelty. They may try to demolish our homes. They may build walls to keep us apart. But if we are brave enough, our shared struggle for a future for all of us will grow higher than any wall. And our bonds of solidarity will never break. Thank you. Thank you. تدا ربا. شكرا جزيلا. تدا ربا. شكرا جزيلا. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.